Watts, who's on the call tonight, and the group's founder, Sarah Glakas. Sarah will be joining in just a few minutes. The three of us make up the volunteer organizing team for the group. And AWIG is kind of an ecosystem now. So we use a few different platforms. If you are here, you are probably a member on the meetup group. That's sort of our events board. So that's where you would get access to meeting announcements, and follow-up messages, including meetup slides, meeting slides, and recording links when possible. So if you miss a meeting or you want to replay a meeting that we've recorded, you can head over to our YouTube page. We have two playlists. We've got fundamentals and deep dives. So you can check both of those out based on what type of topic you're interested in replaying. And then finally, our main discussion forum is our private Facebook group. That's where you can drop a question, you can comment on the meeting tonight, post an interesting article you've been reading. People will request recommendations on different financial services they're looking into that can be local to Austin or wherever you're tuning in from, and connect with other members. All right, some logistics for tonight's meeting. So if y'all are able to, oh yes. I think my mic isn't super high quality, so I'll just speak a little bit louder, and hopefully that, Jeanette, just let me know if that helps. But hopefully y'all are able to see the chat box. You can open it up at that bottom tray where it says chat. This is a space where we can intro ourselves. So feel free to say hello to everybody, give us your name, what you do during the day, and what you're hoping to learn from tonight's meeting. This is also the best space to ask questions and make comments during the presentation. If you see a question that you want to weigh in on, we would love for you to type up your 2 cents in the chat box. This is a good way for us to sort of simulate those side discussions that really supplement the presentation. We used to have a lot of side discussions when we were meeting up in person still, so this chat box is kind of the next best thing while we're still online. And Lori and I will be keeping an eye on the chat box. We'll be punting it to our guest speaker tonight, Sandie, at appropriate times. So if we don't get to your question, we will try our best to ask Sandie to weigh in after the end of the presentation. If you can make sure to please keep your microphones muted until the Q&A, this helps us get a really good quality recording. And it will allow Sandie to get through all of the info that she wants to impart to us before we open the floor up to a question and answer. And then finally, on logistics, we do want to emphasize that nothing said in this group should be taken as individual investing advice. We're all sharing our knowledge and our experiences with each other, but everyone's situation is different. So if you would like to receive advice that's specific to your needs, your goals, your risk tolerances, we encourage you to reach out to a financial professional and enter into an advisory relationship with them. That'll be the best way to receive investing advice that's most relevant to you. There's a few folks in here. Okay. And then on to our guest speaker for tonight, Sandie Coco. She's a numbers nerd, a longtime AWIG member. She's a returning guest speaker to the group. We were very, very lucky to host her as a speaker last year on the topic of budgeting. So we're excited to have her back for this meeting. Can't wait to dive into the nuances of money management during inflationary periods. So Sandie, I will give you the floor.
All right. Thank you, Gwen. Thanks, Lori, as well, for organizing all of these meetups. I've been a member of this group for so many years, I don't remember. Pandemic actually allowed me to go to more of them because then I didn't have to sit in traffic. But here we are. We are talking about money management during inflation. And to kick it off, Gwen kind of asked this, but I really want to know. I really want to know what you guys want to get out of this. There was a jot form where survey that you guys could fill out. I read the majority of those, or all of those, and the majority of you guys are doing fairly well. So I always like to hear what you guys want to get out of this so that I can tailor the rest of the presentation to meet any of your needs. I know what I'm going to do during this presentation. It is basically a way for me to spark a discussion about money management and for us to collaborate and just share different ideas. As Gwen said, finance is personal. That's why it's called personal finance. And so not every person is the same. And you need to know yourself to know what works best for you. But I really would love for you guys to put in something in the chat. What do you obviously cleared your plate, or you're sitting in traffic and you have your camera off and you're muted, or you're multitasking. I know I do that on podcasts. But if you take a moment, put in the chat what you want to learn today. I am scanning those and would love to hear from you guys. I'm going to still scan that. So thank you, Caitlin. You're freaking hilarious and I love you. I just crack up and listen to you on long trips, man. And then I talk to you, even though you can't hear me. Anywho, who am I besides some random person who likes to talk to podcasters in my car when they can't hear me? First of all, I'm a mom. My son's about to be 16. I only have the one kiddo. And he's my favorite person in the whole world. The second thing about me is that I will continuously want to learn and strategize. I love to collaborate, and it comes with just either reading or talking with other people, just consuming new content to be able to go, oh, I didn't think of it that way, which is why I probably am a spreadsheet geek, because it allows me to think and tweak numbers and think of things differently. But I am a spreadsheet geek. I do recognize that I am in the minority. No one, there's very few spreadsheet geeks, but I am one of them. I love my spreadsheets. And then I'm an athlete. So I work out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 3 days a week, lifting weights, because I am just a better human when I can take my aggression out on some weights. Better mom as well. So thanks. So great question, Lori, about wondering people are increasing their emergency fund now. I kind of wonder that as well. If you guys want to answer Lori in the chat, that would be some good discussion to also have on the side. The next thing I want is, I really want this to be interactive, because I can sit here and yak at you, but I have no idea if you are getting anything out of it. And I really would love to get something out of it, for you guys to get something out of it. I will probably get something out of it. I don't have all the answers, but what I am doing is going to share what has worked for me. To kick this off, though, interactivity here. I want to know, how do you earn your income? So if you do a regular 9 to 5 with your job, whether it's 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or what have you, if you get your money from a job, one job, type A in the comments. If you work more than one job, then B. If you are an entrepreneur or run your own company, C. And then if you have the luxury of having passive income to where you do not have to trade your time for money, I want to be you, and you need to put D in there. Woohoo, guest. Love it. D, you must be the retired person, which is where I am headed. All right. So the majority of folks are A's. There's a couple of people who have B's. Oh, there's some entrepreneurs who, I love you. Thanks, Liz. A and C, I'm also kind of sort of fit in that bucket. Nice. And Shannon just covers nearly all the buckets. Awesome. Yay for a fellow spreadsheet enthusiast. I appreciate that. Okay, so here's another question for you guys. Why do you earn income? Like, seriously, this is a serious question. Like, it's not hypothetical. Like, I really want you guys to either come off of mute or type in the chat, why do you guys trade your time for money? Why? Why do we do it? We're talking about money here. We gotta know why. Why are we doing it?
Because I want to grow my family's legacy, my kids' legacy, and my kids' legacy.
Excellent. Thank you, Shannon. All right, Shannon's in it for the legacy. She's going to be that person where the children thank her in the future. I love that.
But I don't want them to know. I don't want them to know, because they have to work hard. I have an almost 18-year-old, and I'm removing a lot of her legacy because I don't want them to know till they're like 35.
Excellent. Sneaky legacies. Awesome. All right. Ruth, the security, I'd love that. I would really probe. If we were sitting and drinking a beer at a happy hour or wine or tea, I would want to know what that means to you. What is security? I can relate to that word, but I'd want to know what that means to you. Worried about having enough in retirement. You don't want to be a Walmart greeter. I get you that with Lori. Future planning for retirement goals, long-term goals, generational wealth, maintain quality of life for myself and the dogs. Got to put the pets in there, Jessica. Oh, Liz, I like yours. Freedom. I would also want to know more about that. And that's good stuff. Excellent. I'm going to tell you guys that one thing I want you to think about is when it comes to money, money is a reflection of things that are going on inside of us. Money is a representation of other things. And so money alone has absolutely no value unless somebody is willing to accept that it has value. Like, I could ask you to take a rock in exchange for something, but you would be like, this is just a random rock and I can't do anything with it. But if I offer you $100, then you may be more inclined to do that. So money is just a representation of what we value and what's going on inside of us. And a lot of times we don't dream. We put ourselves in a box and say, this is what we're supposed to do. So we're supposed to exchange our time for money. And then, we get a house, we maybe have some kids, and you work for 40 something years, and then you retire, and then you enjoy more freedom in your life in retirement. And then you kiss the world goodbye at some point. So I'm going to challenge each of you guys to dream a little bigger. Dream bigger and know that there is endless possibilities of what we can do. And money, for me, is opportunity. It is an opportunity to do whatever I want, whether that is to give it away and help people, whether it is to buy a bigger house or buy something in exchange for it, or to spend it on travel and experiences. And so I don't have a shortage of things. And I want you guys to all think and dream, like if you had unlimited budget, what would your day-to-day look like? Because mine would not look like it is today, right? I would absolutely fill my day with all kinds of things, taking care of myself and spending it with my loved ones. So we're going to get into this discussion. I just want you guys to get thinking of things, because sometimes we forget while we're doing things and we just focus on the next step as opposed to the long term. I really want to be able to retire and not have to work. And we instead think, oh, well, I need to get this job in order to get there. But sometimes you may be able to change that goal and actually go for what you really want. So dream big, know your why. So what is inflation? You guys have probably seen some memes out there, but this is probably one of my favorite ways to describe inflation. The picture on the left is maybe what you would get served if you actually bought groceries and cooked. And it's a decent meal. You've got a lot of food. That same amount of money that you spent to buy those groceries and make that meal would now get you the plate on the right. That's pretty much inflation. Our money's not going as far as as it used to, right? So $100 today is not the same. You won't be able to get as much for that $100 that you can today as you will in 3 months if inflation continues to grow. Just like back in the day where, a movie ticket costs like $5 and now today they're like $15. So inflation is definitely where your money doesn't go as far. So budgeting is important so that you can make your money go further. So question is, how do you budget during inflation? How do you do it? Okay, you guys probably are not going to like this answer, but here it is. It's the same way you do it during deflation and a time of growth. It's a budget. I'm going to preface here and stop because a budget does not mean that you can't have anything. So that B word, the budget word, gets a bad rap. For me, a budget is a plan. It is a plan that makes me think consciously about how and where I want to spend my money. And so I have a budget. I developed a budget. It has been many years. It's like been 15-ish, 18 years ago. I actually developed a budget. I was living paycheck to paycheck. And I was like, I'm not getting ahead. I don't understand. Where is the budget book for people who don't have money? Because there was a ton of books on how to invest all your extra money. And I'm like, well, I don't have any extra money. So I found a book called All Your Worth with Elizabeth Warren and her daughter Amelia wrote. They wrote 2 books, but All Your Worth was the book that I found. And it introduced a concept to me. And then it actually allowed me to do some math. And I developed a spreadsheet from that. And I started that spreadsheet, I believe, in 2003. I still have that spreadsheet. It is the one file, seriously, I cannot live without. It is how I track everything, but it's how it keeps me in my plan, which is my budget. So let's talk more about budgeting, okay? So I'm going to start with this picture. So first of all, this picture is of the Cliffs of Moher. This is located in the southwestern edge of Burren region in County Clare, Ireland. I just returned from a 2-week trip to Ireland, and it was freaking phenomenal. This was one of my 2 favorite places. The Cliffs of Moher are famous because there's been several movies that have had scenes shot there, including Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, The Princess Bride, where the Cliffs of Insanity, where he's climbing up the cliff, is also shot here. But I loved this scenery. It was gorgeous. It was super scary because those cliffs are really freaking high up. But what I want you guys to know is that there are gaps in between these cliffs. And the gaps in between the cliffs can be related to our money. So we've got income in the foreground, and then there's a gap, and then there's spending, and then there's another gap, and there's saving. The question is, how wide or narrow is your gap between income and spending? That's what we want to do. We want to mind the gap, because budgeting is not rocket science. It is basic mathematics. So you have income and then you spend. And if your income minus your spending is a big 0, well, then basically you are living paycheck to paycheck, and you have no room for the future or savings, or when things get rough, like during inflation, and your money can't go as far. So there was so many castles there, Lori. I saw so many castles. I can't even tell you how many castles we went inside. It was gorgeous though. So income minus spending. If you're 0, this is where you can develop a plan to get to the point where you're not having nothing left. Most people do this, what I just showed on the right. They have their income coming in, and then they just spend. And then I asked this question on the form: how much do you save, and how do you know how much we have left? And I know the majority of people will launch that bank app if they have it on their phone, and they'll go, oh, I have this much left. And then they go, oh, okay, I can buy this. That's not a budget. That's not a budget, because you don't know what that money is for, right? So we want to be able to create a system where we know how much money we have and how much money we can spend and where we can spend it. And not everybody is going to be the same. But I am a huge fan of a money management strategy that has been around for quite some time. A couple of you guys already know about it, but there's 3 buckets. The first bucket is must-haves. So must-haves are literally things that you must have in order to live. So food, water, shelter. So that would be housing, food, transportation, or a way to get to and from work, right? Anything that if you lost your job or had no money coming in, you would still spend money on, because you absolutely had to have it. That is what a must-have is. A must-have is not a pedicure. And it's not getting a bikini wax, despite what some people may believe is a must-have, but it really is not a must-have. So must-haves are the essentials. Then the next bucket is savings. And this is not by accident. Savings comes second because that's what we should do. We should absolutely have savings come first. We need to pay ourselves first. And we pay ourselves first by putting money into savings. And that can take different forms. Savings is one giant bucket, and there's many different types of savings. But as long as you have a bucket of savings. The third one is your wants. Wants are the things that exactly, I just want it. That is your bikini wax. Go get there. You can do that in your wants. Wants are the things that make life fun, because I am not the type of person who is going to ever tell somebody that you should not spend money on lattes or that you should not spend money on whatever your favorite vice is. My point of view is for you to be able to spend as much as you want on the things that you enjoy. And so how do you get there? You do have to actually have a budget or strategy, because we only have 100%. So 100% of whatever you take in, you really need to know that number. Okay. And so this circle represents all of your income. Okay. Your must-haves should only take 50% of that. Okay. This is a rule of thumb. Am I going to tell you that you can't have 51% or 60%? Absolutely not. This is food for thought. This is the strategy and this is the targets I shoot for. And I do have it in my spreadsheet where I know exactly how much my must-haves are. And so I know if I'm over 50%, and I just get those things in check. But the idea is that of the 100% that you take in income, whether that's monthly or biweekly or on an annual basis, 50% should only go to must-haves. Pay yourself first. Take 20% of that and put it in savings. And we'll talk more about different types of savings. But pay yourself first with 20%. And then that leaves 30% to do whatever you want. Okay. This is the strategy that I found in All Your Worth, the book that I read. It was the idea that opened me up. And I said, oh my goodness, I can actually do a math problem. I can actually take my income. I can write it down. I can add up all the must-haves that I have. I can subtract it out. And then I can cry because I'm at freaking 75%. That's a lot of people. And if you're in that situation, then you have two things that you can do. Do you remember the Cliffs of Moher and the gap? You need to widen the gap. How can you widen the gap? It's only two ways. You can make that 100% grow bigger. So instead of, you can increase your income. How do you do that? There's a lot of different ways to increase your income by taking on a second job. House hacking, which is sharing your place with somebody, like renting out a room, downsizing, but you need to increase your income. If anybody's looking to pivot to a different career, shoot me a message, because I have a great person who I follow, and she does a phenomenal job of helping people, even older people. She just did a webinar for people in like their 50s who want to just basically completely change their career. But do you remember when we were dreaming earlier? I still want you to dream here too, because you can increase your income. It's not always easy, but it's always a possibility. So if you have no money left and your gap between your income and your spending is so small that you have nothing left to save, then you can either increase your income or decrease your expenses. And of course, during a time of inflation, that is much harder to do because everything astronomically went up in price. So this is the rudimentary plan that I follow. And that's what I want you guys to do, is get a plan. So the first thing is to know your numbers. This is the horrible part that no one likes to do. I get it. This is the budget part that no one likes. But I promise you, if you do the work, it will pay off, because this is what I did. If anybody is interested in having a support group, because this is something that I've had in my mind for years now, is to create a support group where we actually have accountability calls and helping people work through it. shoot me a message. I would be happy to put together a small group of people to work through to where we can actually help each other gather all this data. That is, I promise you, it's the hardest part, or one of the hardest parts, just getting started. But if you do not know your numbers, then you really are going to you're just blindly going through your financial life. It was when I knew my numbers that I had so many aha moments. And I've worked on the side with a few coaching clients, and I've had people who, when I made them do this exercise of writing down how much are you bringing in and what are you spending money on, they're like, oh my goodness, during the pandemic, we ordered Chinese takeout so often that we were spending $600 a month as a family on Chinese. And my response to that was, did you want to spend $600 on Chinese? Because I'm not here to judge. Like, if that's what you wanted to do, great. But they're like, no. And so a lot of times what happens is, if you don't know your numbers, is that you just have no idea how much you're spending until you actually can see it in black and white, or you actually look at it, because we will all guesstimate, oh, well, it wasn't that much, right? It's usually more than you expect. So know your numbers. You need to analyze how much money you're coming in. And if you can actually categorize into your, identifying wants and savings to get an idea of what that percentage is across those buckets, that is the first step of getting a plan. The second step is actually looking at your due dates and balancing that out. So my spreadsheet that I developed, I have every column is when I get paid, and I get paid every 2 weeks. So I have pay periods. And then I have all of my bills. And so I can see between the two pay periods, what's due across those two dates within a month. And I try to make sure that it's 50% must-haves. And so what that means is if you're getting paid, twice a week, twice a month, every other week, and your first paycheck is where the majority of your bills are due, well, then your must-haves and, the things you have to pay is going to suck like 60 to 70% of your take-home pay. And that means that for those 2 weeks, you're not going to have any wants, which means you're going to be a pretty moody, unhappy person. And so you want to be able to look at your balance, your due dates, and balance those across those pay periods. A lot of people don't realize that you literally can pick up the phone and call people and say, I need to change my due date. And almost everybody will actually allow you to change the due date of whatever, whether it's credit cards, maybe not so much, although you can potentially do that, but almost all your other bills can always have your due dates change. And I've seen in a few apps, like if you log in and pay your bill online, I've actually seen it where you can actually request a due date change online. So you don't even have to talk to a human. But that's the second thing to do, so that you can actually balance out between the two periods. The third thing that I'm going to recommend is creating these buckets. I'm a huge fan of what used to be sub-accounts. So you could actually open a checking or a savings account, and then that would be one big pot of money. And then inside that pot of money, you could actually label sub-accounts so that you can actually know, okay, if I have $5,000 in this account, 3,000 is safe for XYZ and 2,000 is for this. And you could actually label what those items were. I have not seen that today. I think sub-accounts have gone away. And so you just create a whole separate account is what I have started to do. So I'm a huge fan of the buckets. And there are some in the I use personal capital as well for my, looking at my net worth. And then I have not used Mint nor You Need a Budget, but those are tools that you can absolutely use. Some of those do cost a subscription. And the only thing I'll say about those tools is that those tools are only as good as your behavior. So just subscribing to the tool is not going to make you earn more money. And subscribing to these apps is not going to make you actually behave differently. So you actually have to be committed to that. But what it will do is allow you to gain intelligence about how and when you're spending your money so that you can actually make a choice of whether you want to continue to do that or if you want to change something. And then the fourth thing, and that's what I want to talk about for pretty much the remainder of this time, is I'm a huge fan of automating the process. I found the budget and I created a spreadsheet, and in my spreadsheet has been, again, it's the most powerful tool in my life. It's grown over the years, but it allows me to get a good glimpse of my financial health and well-being. And it allows me also to track, like I no longer use a checkbook. And in fact, I don't even write checks, but my checkbook used to be my ledger of like how much money I have. And now my spreadsheet has all of that data, and I can see what bills are due and when I've paid them. I can also easily look back in last year's numbers to see, hey, your electric bill went up. Why did it go up? Is it inflation, or is it because you have something wrong with your HVAC system? And so it's been a really great tool for me. I am constantly updating my spreadsheet. I do it pretty much once a week, but that works for me. It does not work for everybody. And I do track every single penny, because every single penny has a job in my budget. Every single penny is earmarked to either must-haves, savings, or wants. And so automating the process is also something I do. I absolutely automate the process, but I know that there are some people who could give, in fact, my sister's one of them. She's like, man, I'm not doing your stinking spreadsheet. She's like, that's not for me. Right. She's like, I got pen and I got paper. And I'm like, yeah, but you abandoned it. And so now what I've had her do is just automate the process. And so I had her create some accounts and then automate it to where you don't have to think about it. And then it gets done regardless, whether you pay attention to it or not. All right. Lori, I'm with you. I'm working on my retirement spreadsheet too, because that's my next endeavor. I'm trying to figure out how to retire early, and that basically means how can I just not have to work for as much money as I do, so I can go do more things that may not earn as much. That's where I'm headed. So let's talk about automating. If there's any questions you guys have, put them into chat. I am scanning that. Again, I really want you guys to get as much information as you can out of this. Again, this is really just for you guys to kind of get the wheels turning and for you to think of different ways to be. But I'm going to walk through different scenarios of how you can automate your money. So we start with your salary. So this could be on a per period basis. So you start with whatever your take home pay is. So I'm not even going to worry about taxes and all that stuff, just whatever you net, not what you gross. So that's going to be considered 100%. And with that, you can do two things. One, I hope everyone is putting something into a retirement, even if it is only 5%. And if you are not contributing to a retirement account, then I am going to highly recommend that you start doing that. And if you cannot do 5%, start with 1%. And then if you do 1% and then you add a percent every month, by the end of the year, you will be contributing 12%. And so you will be better off than you were before. But in this scenario, even if you are only contributing 5%, you have 95% left, and that gets dumped into your checking account or wherever you have your checks deposited. So we're just going to say that it goes into a checking account. All right. So then what can you do with that? Inside your checking account, okay, you then have 50% of that 95%, because 5% went to retirement, for your must-haves. Again, must-haves is the mortgage, rent, utilities, food, gas, things that you cannot live without and you would still pay even if you had no income. And then in that same bucket, so this money is still sitting in your checking account. And then you have 15% that would be earmarked for savings. So what is savings? Whatever you want it to be. Okay. This could be a down payment for something like a vacation or a house that you're saving up for. It could be for a car. It could just be for, I don't know yet, but I want to save. Whatever savings means to you. But this is not in a retirement account. This is savings that is liquid that you can get to today and you can spend today. Although you shouldn't spend it today because in the whole point, it's savings. But eventually it would have a goal. And then the 30% in this bucket. So this is 30% of the 95%, because remember the 5% went to retirement, is your wants. So that's where you would go out to dinner, your Netflix, all your subscriptions, anything that would be considered short-term spending. And so in this model, you basically have your salary getting deposited into your checking account. And then you have to keep track of the 3 buckets within that one big pool of money. So it's really hard to know what 50% is versus 15 versus 30%. This is where a lot of people do and how they manage their money. And so what happens is when they look at, it's I get paid in 4 more days. How much money do I have? And they go ahead and say, oh, I have enough and I can spend it. But what they don't know is, that bill hasn't cleared yet. And so you really spent money that was going to must-haves and now you don't have it, right? Or you didn't think through and you didn't actually consciously decide on what to spend, because in this very moment, you decided to spend it on XYZ because you didn't have a clear picture of your entire financial status and health. So this is one way. This is another way to increase your savings rate. So you start with your salary and then you dump as much as you can up to the limits, ideally, into your retirement account, whether that's a 401k, a solo retirement account, or Roth IRA, any of those vehicles, right? There's a whole line of strategies as far as that. If you're not able to reach the IRS limits, then again, start with something that you consider feasible that you can do, and just take it and automate it. It should be automated. It comes directly, usually from your employer, and put it into your retirement, and then pretend like that really doesn't even factor in. And that's how I run my finances. So I will put money into a retirement account and I just don't even factor that in. And I just say, okay, whatever I net after that is what I consider to be 100% of my income that I get to play with. And so from there, what I do is I automate this. So I absolutely have, I will have money go directly from my salary, whether that's direct deposit from my employer. And a lot of employers will allow you, depending on the employer, they will allow you to direct money to more than one place. So you can actually say, if you want to have money go to like 3 or 4 different accounts, depending again on what your, how many places that your employer will let you spend on or send money to. So then what you do is after that, then now that you've sent 20% to savings, you've got 80% left, and that gets dumped into your checking account. And from there, you then have to know that in this bucket of 80% that's left, 50% is earmarked for must-haves and 30% is what I can do whatever I want with, right? All right, any questions? All right. Yep. You guys can absolutely still interact with
Hi, Sandie.
us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. Oh, yay. My name is Jeanette. I have a question. I did put it in the chat for someone who's self-employed, 1099. Do you have any tips or any apps? I did have a few people put in some suggestions as well, but what's your take or suggestions on that end?
For self-employed, like suggestions about retirement or just budgeting in general?
Oh,
or what
budgeting.
direction?
In regards to budgeting.
Yeah, I do actually. I do have some tips on that. So I have a family member that is a wait staff, right? So she waits tables, so her income is very volatile. And there's other entrepreneurs where they don't earn a consistent amount. So what I recommend for people like that is to look at you need to look at your past income, and you need to look at a rolling 12 months, and then figure out what is your high and what's your low, and pick something that you're comfortable with. I recommend somewhere in the middle, right? So that's what what you're looking for is a base number that you can say is my salary, right? I'm going to pay myself this salary. And I have done this with a couple of coaching clients, and I just did this with me because I changed jobs and I get paid on the 15th and the 31st, and it drives me bonkers. And so I basically have my money get dumped into an account, and then I pay myself on a date in which I want to get paid. But the key to that is to find out your median income and put yourself on a set amount of money that you can then pay yourself on a regular basis, whether you want to do it every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever works for you. And so finding that is going to be the hard part, right? So you need to go back and look historically at what you made to kind of get an idea of what that number should be. And then you can set up a system to where you can actually pay yourself. And I'd be happy to chat with you as well. To dive more into that as well. So I don't know if I said integrated, and if I did, you guys need to tell me what context that was at, because I may have forgotten exactly what the heck I said. But keep these questions coming, because this is useful, right, for you guys. So for me to know what you guys want. So you can automate with multiple accounts, and this is what I do, right? So I have my salary, and my salary starts with dumping as much as I can into my retirement accounts. And I do split between a 401k and a IRA and a 401k Roth. And of course, you can read a bazillion blog posts about about what strategy to use across those two. Yeah, I can switch slides if anybody needs to. And then what I do personally is I actually have money going into escrow. So I own a home and I have to pay property taxes and insurance. And I do not escrow with my mortgage company. I escrow myself. And so what that means is that I pay this annually. I pay the bill annually. So I pay property taxes once a year, and I pay my homeowner's insurance once a year. And in the past, I would be like, holy crud, I have this huge bill and I don't know how I'm going to pay it. And so what I did is I finally got smart again when I developed the system, and I said, I'm going to create a separate account for escrow, and I am going to calculate how much I need for taxes and insurance. And so I take those numbers and I add them up and I divide by 24. Because there's 12 months, and I do the twice a week. Technically, if you get paid every other week, there's 26 paychecks in a year, because we have those months where there's 3 Fridays in a month. So there's 26 pay periods, but I just divide by 24. So that's how much money I know I need to save. So this is my escrow account, taxes and insurance. Take those two amounts, add those up, divide by 24, and that's the amount of money I need to put into that account every paycheck. And I go into my HR app and I put in that's how much money I want out of my paycheck that goes directly deposited into my escrow account. If you can't do direct from your employer, you can still set up automation. I do this as well because I've tapped out on some things. So I do have things go dumped into my checking account, and then I have it auto transfer on a regular basis, because most bank apps will let you do that as well now. So you can just auto transfer on a regular basis from point A to point B, and then you have it automated outside of your employer. The other thing I save is tuition. My son is going to go to college, and for a while he was in private school and I had to pay tuition. I also got tired of having to pay tuition and struggling with that. So I finally did the math and said, this is how much money I'm going to seed this account every paycheck to where, and I use my spreadsheet to know, I put in each month and I would see how much is coming out and how much is going in. And I could see at what point I would run out of money. So I'd know how much money I need to put in there. And then I asked you guys a question as well on the forum. If you were able to get a bonus or a windfall of some sort, where would that money go? And I can tell you that in the past, in the beginning, when I was building up my financial stability, and if I got a windfall, I would literally seed these two accounts. So if I got a $2,000 bonus, I can tell you that I would take the $2,000 and I would split it either whatever percentages I wanted, but I would take it and I would seed it into my escrow account and the tuition account, so that what I needed to contribute on a monthly or a recurring paycheck basis was less, because I was able to take the bonus and dump it into that account. This is something that I absolutely recommend. I recommended this to family members who own a home and they came into home ownerships and they weren't really prepared. And they're like, oh my goodness, I had a whole lot of repairs. And I said, you need to have an emergency home account. And when you get a windfall, seed it, meaning take that money and put it in that account and forget it exists so that you have it and you don't have to stress about where you're going to come up with that money. So this is my automating with multiple accounts. So I do have an escrow, I have a tuition account, and I do have a few others. So
Hey, Sandie.
Yes,
Sandie,
ma'am.
can you talk a little bit about why you want to manage your own escrow account?
I do it for a few reasons. One, I can, because if you have enough equity in your home, then your mortgage lender will allow you to not have to pay them. So I can do it. The other reason is escrow accounts. There's laws about how much overage an escrow account can have and how far low it can go. And I got tired early on when I was a first homeowner of getting that letter in the mail that said, you owe us more money because we underestimated. So now your mortgage is going up. And then I also had the negative where they were like, your account's too fat and you have too much money in it. And so they would send me a check. And I got tired of playing the yo-yo game with that. The other thing too is that if I have the money sitting in my account, then it's sitting in my account. And if only break in case of emergency, if there was a severe emergency and it was early in the year, or if I had enough time, I could literally borrow from myself and take that money and spend it on whatever emergency and then figure out how to replenish that before those payments were due. So I like having that extra security. The other piece to that is that when I was looking at getting a home equity line of credit or any other kind of credit, I had that big fat account sitting there. So it looked like I had money, and they don't know that it's earmarked, nor do they actually care that it's earmarked and it's going to be spent. They just see that I have money. And so for all of those reasons, I really enjoy escrowing. It is only for people who are disciplined, because if you are not to be trusted with a pile of cash and you can't save, then obviously I don't recommend it. But I do recommend it because I have complete control over it. And escrow, when you pay money into your mortgage lender, the money just literally sits in an account under their name. So they're earning, the abysmal 0.02%. But I'd rather have, those 3 pennies than them. So it plays into, that as well. But it's really about, I have control over it. I can borrow from it, and it makes my credit and my financial overall health look better because I do have some more money. So then what I do is I actually have money coming in, and I do have escrow going out. And then I also have tuition, and this comes directly from my employer. So I pretend like I don't make that money. I just pretend like it's not even there. It's like totally out of mind, out of sight. It's automated. I don't see it. So then whatever gets dumped into my account, I then start saying, this is 100% of what I can play with. And from there, I actually still save more because I want to do remodeling in my home, and I know that I'm going to need another vehicle. So I literally have an account that I have named House Car. And by the way, if you don't know, you can actually open up an account and you can actually create nicknames. And so when you open up your app, you can actually see the names of them. And I have a credit union, and I also use Capital One. And so I just nickname everything so I can see what it is. So I have a House Car, and then I also have a Saved Once. Saved Once is how I went to Ireland. I literally paid myself and knew that I wanted to go to Ireland. I knew how much the trip was going to cost. And so I just completely shoved money into that account every paycheck. And I did it for like the past 2 years. I was saving for that trip for 2 years. And so it wasn't painful all at once. So I spread the love over 2 years, but literally the money got dumped into my checking account. And then I absolutely have an auto transfer that happens every 2 weeks. So if I pay myself on a Friday, the auto transfer kicks in and happens the following Monday. So I do give myself a day pad period in case there's some weird glitch and that the paycheck doesn't clear. I can go in and stop it. But it is set up on a reoccurring basis. So I don't have to worry about that. I just know that it gets sucked out of my account and it's all done. So the remaining balance, because I basically put 10% from each of those, so 20%. So I'm actually saving more than 20% because, right, if I look at my gross income, I'm saving in my retirement, and then I'm also saving for escrow and tuition, but I just pretend like those percentages don't matter for me. And so 100% of the remaining money goes into my checking. And from there, I take 20% and shove it to savings, and I earmark it for what I'm looking to spend. And then the rest goes into the checking. And then from there, I know inside my checking account that 50% of my money is going to have to be spent on must-haves and 30% will be on wants. Now, if there are months or paycheck periods that go over 50%, which does happen quite frequently, then my wants gets reduced. And that's what happens. So instead of 30%, I may have 25%. And on tough weeks where there's just some craziness going on or something, then it could be that I have 20%. It just depends on what's coming out of my must-haves. So, love the beach house, Ruth. I want a beach house too, as well. So then the other way that you can maximize savings is, again, you have your IRS limits of whatever you're putting in your retirement accounts, and then you have your after retirement account. Again, I consider that to be 100% of what's left. And then you can actually pay yourself. So instead of it coming from your employer, you can actually set this up. And this is also something that I did before when I couldn't send all the money to these different places. And so you notice that I'm still dealing with 20%. I'm just putting 5% towards escrow, 5% towards tuition, 5 to the house and car account, and then 5 to save once. These percentages are mine. So you can do whatever you want. So you can basically say, if I have 20% that I'm going to earmark for savings, Ruth may say 20% to the beach house because that's what I choose, right? There's no right or wrong in any of these, it's personal finance, right? So, whoever is guessed about removing the guilt on the wants and putting it in there, oh my goodness, I can tell you that my trip to Ireland was so enjoyable because one, it was paid for. And not only did I pay for the trip, I gave myself a budget, and I gave myself a huge budget. So I was buying a lot of Guinness and a lot of souvenirs, and I did not care because I had enough money, although it's kind of cheap over there. So I was actually really happy with the amount of, my dollar went further over there. So then after I take the 20% of savings and I chop it up, and I literally do have these different accounts. So like when I open my Capital One, I think I've counted, but I probably have 8 different freaking accounts. And it's because I earmark stuff. So when I said every dollar has a job, like I was serious about that. Every freaking dollar has a job. And so the rest of the money, the 80% gets put into my checking account. And then from there, again, you still have to figure out your must-haves and then your wants out of that bucket, right? So those are some of the ways that we can do this. Another way is to actually take money and create a sub account. So this is what I consider to be somebody who may not be able to trust themselves, or they don't want to have to just say, I'm looking at my checking account and I need to figure out how much of this is must-haves and how much of this can I blow. And so if you actually take your money and send it to your savings account, and then you take money and actually put it into another account for your wants, like you literally take 30%. And this is the tricky part, because if you take 30% and you send it to your wants, then you really need to be clear on your math, because you need to make sure you have 50% for your must-haves. And then you need to still be able to pay yourself the 20%. So, but I would take, and this is one, I just recommended this to a young man who's never budgeted, and he's not going to do that. He's not going to do a spreadsheet, and he's probably not going to do an app. So he's not going to do any of these things. And I said, if the least that you do is try this, go open up a special account and then just take whatever you consider to be, and probably not 30%, maybe it's 25% or even 20%, but take 20% of your check, because he does get paid pretty much a regular amount, and just automate that to this account. And then when you are out and you want to know if you have money to blow, you look at that account and that account only. If you are disciplined, this is what I do. So I do have money, and I do send money to my savings account. And then I pay as many bills as I can with my credit card. I pay almost everything goes on a credit card. If I can put it on a credit card, I put it on a credit card, because I'm getting points. And so I get cash back. And what I do is anything that I can't put on a credit card, because there are a few bills that you can't put on a credit card, then I pay out of my checking account. But I basically put everything on my credit card, and then you have to pay that off. You have to pay it off in full, and you have to pay it off every month in order for this to work. If you are not disciplined, or if you have credit card debt already, you're not ready for this phase yet. But if you're disciplined enough, then this is a great strategy. In my spreadsheet, I actually created a spreadsheet to where I can track what is on a credit card, and I still know if it's in my must-haves or my savings, or not savings, or in my wants. And so this has worked for me, and I do get cash back, and I have different categories within my spreadsheet to track these things. But this is a great way. Then you just pay off the credit card every month. And so it's a great way to get the points. It is more complex in the fact that if you put all of your bills on your credit card, and you put some of your wants, like your, going out to dinner is considered a want in my book, because groceries is a must have. But if you put everything on a credit card, you do need to be able to separate and know, okay, I'm spending, I'm going to pay about 50% of my credit card bill this month is going to come from this must-have bucket, whether that's in your checking account and it's mixed in, or whether it's a separate account that you label must-haves and you send money there. Just know that when you go to pay your credit card, you may have to pay from multiple sources. So it is get a little bit more complicated. So we're getting to I've done this presentation, or a form of a presentation, over the years, and this one's much different. And I did change it up for folks who've already seen this before. So there's a little bit more into it, but so we're kind of getting to the end so we can open it up for questions. I'm going to leave you with a few things here. This is one of my mottos, and I tell this to family members and just anybody: chase the dollars, not the pennies. I've seen it to where people don't chase the dollars and they chase the pennies. And what is chasing pennies? Clipping coupons? Does that even exist? I mean, who gets the newspaper anymore? I'm not gonna buy myself that latte or that Starbucks because I can't afford that. Okay, those are all pennies. What are the dollars? The dollars is the big stuff, right? The dollars is the how much money you're spending in rent. How much money are you spending in food? How much money are you spending on a car note or car insurance? So when I say chase the dollars, I'm talking about items that cost like $300+, not things that are sub 300. So the biggest thing you can do is set a goal, and set a goal by establishing your must-haves target, whether you want to start with 60% or 20 or 50% or whatever you feel comfortable with. Then you can then set a goal, but chase the dollars. So when you set the goal and you actually do the work to analyze your spending, this is where you have the biggest impact. So I was coaching a young lady who is recently divorced. And so now, her entire financial world has changed. And doing the math, I'm like, you can't afford your life right now. And you are going to run out of money, and you're going to run out of money like within like 14 months. And so what I recommended to her was like, you're paying a lot in rent, and see, are you willing to relocate? Because that is a way to save a lot of money. If you're open to getting a roommate or different things like that, then you can increase your savings rate. So maybe you still actually can afford your life and you can still afford your bills. But if you want to increase your savings rate, then one way to do it is to cut your must-haves. And then you can actually redirect those funds to savings. So cutting your house note or living expenses is going to be the biggest thing. That is maybe not as easy to do as cutting your food budget. So one of the things that I did during before the pandemic, curbside service is, it's kind of a luxury, right? Because it's like convenience, and there is a surcharge. You pay for the convenience. I can tell you my grocery bill went down when I started curbsiding. Why? Because I wasn't in the store. And so I didn't buy all the random stuff that I saw that I was like, oh, I probably need that or want that. And I actually started to literally think about, what am I going to cook this week? Because I'm not a chef, I don't enjoy cooking. In fact, eating out is in my budget and I just bake it in. And I know that my son's addicted to freaking P. Terry's. I know how much free P. Terry's cost, and we do P. Terry's at least once, if not 2 or 3 times a week, because it's convenient. And that's a meal. And I'm just like, you know what? The amount of money that I trade, I can take him to the drive-thru. He gets a decent meal. I don't have to cook. I don't have to clean. I don't have the dishes. So it saves me. So, but curbsiding has allowed me to actually get real with myself. And so I will literally say, are you really going to make that meal? Because if you're going to buy all these vegetables that are going to get thrown in the trash because you didn't cook, just don't buy the stinking vegetables. Like, just don't do it. So that's what I started doing. I started just to get real with myself and say, you know what? Instead of buying this because I know I'm stressed out and we've got football, we've got all kinds of after school activities, I'm just going to go ahead and spend the money at curbside. So that's the second thing you can do, is control the amount of money you spend on food. And then, of course, all the other bigger things. So interest rates have started to creep up, but when the pandemic hit, it was an excellent time to go refinance or at least renegotiate some things. So I did have one client who bought a car shortly after she got divorced. So her credit score was in the toilet. So her financing for her car was pretty abysmal. She was at some really ridiculous high rate. And I basically told her repeatedly, please go refinance this. You can save yourself like $300 a month. And she was too busy working to save herself money, which I find so interesting because we do that. We're human. And it's like, well, I'm too busy. But you're busy working to pay the extra $300 that you could save if you placed a few phone calls. And so, but then again, know thyself, right? So like that, eventually it took her like 14 months, but she finally did it. And then she was like, oh my goodness, I'm paying so much less. And I'm like, I know. And I'm glad you finally did it. So chase the dollars, not the pennies. Set your goal. Set what you are going to commit to spending on must-haves and stick to it. Cut the easy stuff. There is apps that will actually tell you all the subscriptions that you're paying. And if you're somebody, I don't get the feeling in this group, but there are some. This young man that I just started coaching literally doesn't look at anything. He didn't even have his bank app. And when he finally got the bank app, he was like, oh, my old gym is still charging me. It's like, you would have known that if you had looked at the bank statements, right? So it's not like they were doing something, sneaky. It's that'll, these things happen. So check on all your subscriptions, negotiate rates. You can call around for insurance brokers for your car insurance, homeowners insurance, renters insurance, anything like that. Cable, these days you can call and negotiate. It's a matter of picking up the phone. It does take time. If you're nice and you just call, I've been a loyal customer for 5 years, 3 years, or what have you. I'm wanting to reduce my rates. How can you help me? That is literally how you can open the conversation and negotiate. I have done that, and I do it on an annual basis with some of the companies. I used to do it for cable. I finally cut the cable tie, but I can tell you that I always negotiated cable until it got to the point where I was like, I'm not willing to pay for this anymore. And so I canceled it. But I was able to, I got the sports NFL package for $0 for like 3 years because I just called and said, I'd like the NFL package for $0. And after they kind of got over the laughter of like, what, they gave it to me. And so all I did was ask. Cell phone plans, all that good stuff, call them because you will not see it in the app sometimes. So like this past Christmas, I wanted to get a new iPhone and I'd been with Verizon for years and I kept looking at the Verizon app and I was like, I walked into the store and said, I'm looking at buying another phone. What do you guys have? They pulled up my account and they said, you have a loyal discount. We can give you this much. And it was a better deal than anything I'd seen in print, but I actually had to go in and talk to them. And so it does take, again, time, but it's totally worth it when you can cut any of this easy stuff. And then if you're still wanting to either increase your savings rate because, or if you are looking to widen the gap between your income and your spending, then you can cut a little bit more where it does hurt. And this is what I've said before, like you can get a roommate, you could potentially downsize a vehicle to a cheaper car, or even sell your car if you have multiple ones and you don't need those. You can check into different ways to save on taxes, which is with your flex spending accounts or health savings account if you qualify for those. If you have children and you have childcare, you can shop around for home daycares or any other ways that you can reduce some of those expenses. And then if things are really, really still tight, then radical surgery is needed. And this is where you either figure out how to increase your salary or you literally move to a cheaper or less expensive cost of living area. I highly recommend this for younger people who, aren't as settled and it's not this domino effect of like, it would disrupt children's lives, but there are options, right? And if you do it for a short period of time, it allows you to get back to a level playing field financially, build up your financial health and well-being, and then you can move back into the high cost of living areas. So there are some things that you can do. Again, not always easy, but it's always a possibility, right? So this is pretty much, we're at like 6:30 and we have about 15 minutes left for any kind of Q&A. And so if there is any, questions, I'd be happy to answer. You guys can either come off of mute or type in the chat. But I appreciate you guys hanging with me for this long. I hope you guys got something out of this.
Sandie, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Caitlin. I just remembered that at the beginning of COVID, I called University Federal Credit Union, who has my car loan, and said I wanted to find out about rates. And they said they do a one-time courtesy interest rate reduction of 1 point just because I called, and I guess they were worried I was going to transfer it. So that was one of those what, who would know that you do it? So I just thought I'll call them back again, but everybody should try it.
Thank you. That's a great tip. I know it's so crazy how much, and being nice to people, just being courteous and nice and but not afraid to ask for what you want, which is, here's my situation. What can you do to help? So thank you, Caitlin. That's good to know. So Caitlin, do you want to promote the podcast that you and Sarah do? Because somebody was asking about the podcast. You're on mute.
Yes, I will. But first, I found a present that I want to get for you, but I can't do it fast enough. So I'm just putting it. Oh, God, it looks like a crazy person link. But you have to click on it, because I think you should get it for yourself since I won't be quick enough. Okay. And then I'll put the link to our podcast in the chat. Is it showing up what it is?
Your podcast link isn't showing up yet.
No, I was doing a link to something I think Sandie should buy for herself to celebrate her spreadsheet. Did it not show up?
It did. I'm going to be a freak in the sheets. Now people really want to know about your podcast too. And if there's any other questions while Caitlin tells you about the podcast, go ahead and ask those. That mug is hilarious and I'm totally buying it.
Okay, and now I'm going to put the name. I'm on my iPad. Anyway, I'm going to mute and I'll put the information in the chat if I can figure out how to do this on my iPad.
Maybe while Caitlin's doing that, just want to say thank you, Sandie, so much for your presentation. We've already got some nice feedback from folks in the chat box, but it's always just really helpful, again, to kind of revisit these, and for folks who have not seen the presentation before to see all of the different breakdowns that you do in your budgeting system. It's Yeah, Nicole says thank you, very helpful and inspiring. So I think we're all kind of on the same page about that. There was something, kind of going back to the very beginning of the presentation, thinking about your why, like why do you make the income? I even think of like, what do we? So traveling or buying a home, caring for your loved ones later on. I have a bucket now for Christmas gifts. I started it last year, so like every paycheck I stick like a little bit into the Christmas gifts bucket. So then at the end of the year when I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to buy everybody that I love like a nice Christmas gift. In the past, it was like, well, where am I going to pull that money from, in November, because I always wait until the last minute. But now I have this nice bucket that I can, shower all my loved ones with nice gifts that I've saved for over the year.
That's great. I love that. I grew up with Christmas clubs at the credit union. So it was the same concept, except they'd lock that stuff down. So you couldn't actually get money out. So it protected you from yourself. But I actually, one of the things when I started to increase my income, because I did have that moment where I was like, holy crud, my gap is super small. And it actually, there is no gap. There's a negative space, like negative. Once I dug myself out, I did start to actually put money aside for donations and giving. And so when I do get a bonus with work, a percentage of it goes to donations and it goes into an actual donation account. So I have another account that I've labeled donations. And it's been wonderful for me to have that, because when I do see a cause, that I want to give, and I don't have to worry about, do you have 25, 50 bucks, $100? I have it because I just seed that account, and then I make a deal with myself, and that is to drain the account within 12 months so that I don't just sit on it. But I can tell you that it usually does get spent, but it's been great to be that feeling of knowing that you have it. And there's something that happens when you earmark money. It's like you grant yourself the permission. So it just makes spending it all the more enjoyable, whether it's your wants and you're going out to dinner, or it's a vacation, or if it is donations, or if it is just, oh crud, the car broke and I need to buy new brakes, like you, at least you feel confident because you don't have the decision fatigue about, oh, where should I put money for that? So, and Caitlin just put in the chat, the podcast, Women on the Verge of a Financial Breakthrough. It is, I highly recommend it. And you can submit your dumb questions. The premise is that there's a smart person and a dumb person, but I really think that there's just two smart people and one freaking hilarious person that I just love. And so you can submit your dumb questions there. I think I need to submit a dumb question, but is there any other? Yeah.
Sandie, I just thank you so much for the nice words, but I also, one of the things I decided to do is when I got my puppy during COVID, I was going back and forth about pet insurance. And I decided that this time with this dog, I would put the equivalent of the monthly payment for pet insurance into an earmarked savings account instead. And that's automatic, gets deducted every month from my checking. And so that I have this fund that, God forbid, something happened big, that I'll have that money earmarked, but I won't give it to the insurance company because in the past they never paid for anything anyway. And so I just wanted to pass that on too, that I would have never saved that money otherwise, but it's automatically deducted, and that's the pet insurance savings account.
So how's it worked out, Caitlin? Have you used that fund and been glad that you had it?
Yes, like my dog, just dumb stuff where you have to bring them in because you're worried they had some weird color of poop or puke. And before I would be like, I know insurance is going to pay for it unless it's something big, but now I don't worry about it because I know that money's there and that's what it's for, and that it gets replenished as I go along.
Yeah, that is smart. I'm telling you, this whole having money earmarked is just, and that's one of the things that I've taken away. And I just earmark the heck. And you know what? Your priorities and things change because we change, right? You're in a different era of your life. And so it's pretty much a constant evaluation. And I will, usually on an annual basis, reevaluate, where I want money to go based on what I want to do. But and I just love the fact that it just takes the stress off when you already just know you give yourself permission to spend money. And the best thing about it is that it's conscious, is that you literally thought it out. So it wasn't this moment, where you're like, oh, I really want this in this moment. Can I do it? Can I really spend the money? And you kind of go, I don't really know, but I'm going to. And so I really absolutely love that conscious, intended, get a plan, have a plan kind of thing.
Sandie, I have a question. So you have a lot of separate accounts. How many of them are checking accounts?
Only 2. I actually, I have my checking account with my credit union, and that's my main account that I pay most of my bills out of. And that's where my salary gets dumped into my savings account with my credit union. And then I actually have an auto transfer to pay myself because, again, I get paid on the 15th and 31st, and I hated that. So I just basically dump money into it. And then I have a auto self-pay is what I call it. And then, my credit unions didn't have the ability to do sub accounts and things. And I also wanted a teen account for my kiddo, which is what led me to Capital One. And so in Capital One, I have one checking, and then everything else is savings. And so if I need to pay, I can pay all of my bills directly from the savings account. So if I need to pay something directly from like my escrow account, I will pay directly from that savings account, and I can. If I ever need to pay something from checking, then I can transfer it on, in the app and hit my checking account, and then I can just write a check. And so that's the strategy I've used with that piece.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I put in the chat a few minutes ago my email address, and then you guys can always find me through AWIG. I am in the Facebook group as well. And again, if I could get 3 to 5 ladies, I would totally do a support accountability group where we would meet on a reoccurring basis, probably for at least three times to get through the 3 different buckets. And I find that that's probably the best way to get momentum is, you have accountability. You also know that you're able to kind of bounce ideas off of other people. And so that is an option. You can email me or contact me if you're interested in that, and I'll see if we have enough interest in that. But other than that, I'm still in this community. I'll still be around, and always shoot me a message if you have a one-off.
Thanks so much, Sandie, again, for sharing and being so transparent with how you do things and kind of giving us a model to look at. So we really appreciate your expertise and your offer for, kind of creating an accountability group. So I'm sure that folks will be really interested in taking advantage of that.
Yes, thank you, guys.
So before we log off, just a quick plug for our next meeting in September. That'll actually be on back on an investing topic of sustainable investing. So we're going to have Casey Swartz back for a talk on ESGs, looking at different ways to invest sustainably. So we will send a follow-up message with Sandie's contact info and the recording link for tonight. Be on the lookout for that. And then we'll also have the details for next month's event included in that. But in between now and then, feel free to hop on the Facebook group, drop a comment. If we didn't get to a question that you asked in the chat box, you can put it there in the Facebook group, open it up to a larger audience, and see what answers we can get folks to weigh in on. Other than that, we will talk to you soon. And everyone, I hope y'all have a good evening, and we'll see y'all in September.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much,
Thank
Sandie.
you.
That was
nice.
great.
Yay, thank you, guys.
Y'all take care.